Hello and welcome back to Concept First to Mastery. In this particular section, we'll be starting with our CSS series, the beginner series, and I'll be introducing you to what CSS is all about. So before now, we have a part that we've been following, right? We've looked at some basic stuff on HTML, right? And also undo some mini projects. Then we navigated to how to work with Git and GitHub, right? We've rounded up that, and now we are coming to CSS. So this is just to make your journey into web development and also into AI and other things, right? Easier. So if you are just joining and you've not watched the series, HTML and working with Git and GitHub, I will encourage that you do that. And you can check the description, right? Or click on the card that you have above to actually watch that series. All right, so let's get into this. So introduction to CSS. So we'll be looking at quickly what is CSS, right? Basic CSS syntax and structure. Then we'll look at how to use CSS, right? We have three ways of applying CSS to our pages, right? Inline, internal, and external CSS. So I will tell you which one is the most preferred, right, when it comes to efficiency and writing clean code. Then importance of CSS in web development. So this is just what we want to quickly figure out before we wrap up this and move to the next section. So all right, so the very first thing I would like to do is actually have a setup where we can practice things out as we give explanations to what we are doing. So the way I want to handle that is to actually create a project on my desktop. So if you are following me, you can also do the same, just like we did for previous sections that we had. So here I'm going to call this, let's just call this learn CSS for now, right? Just like we did with learn Git. So that folder represents our project, right? Folder. Then here, I'll just try to open the command prompt. So you can also do that. Open the command prompt, cd into desktop, because that is where the project lives, right? Then cd into the name of the project. The name of the project, which is the folder I just created, is learn CSS, right? So now I'm in the working directory of that particular project. I want to open that in my VS Code. So that is opened. All right, so we have that opened. Let's have something that we can work with. Just a simple file, index.html. So if you have watched or if you followed me during this HTML series, right, this should be you should be very familiar with what I'm doing now, right? Exclamation mark, just to generate a quick boilerplate, right, that we can work with. So I'm just going to call this learn CSS. And don't forget, the aim here is just to practice out some of the things that I'll be explaining. So here, the first thing is, what is CSS? CSS simply means cascading style sheets. And the way this style sheet works is that I won't go into the nitty-gritty, right? But the way it works is that it reads from top to bottom, right? Just like it's going to be a file. The style sheet is usually, okay, depending on how you are setting up now, whether it's inline or internal or external. So let me not even go into that yet, right? But it's just cascading style sheets, right, is what CSS actually means. And it's actually a language that is used to describe the presentation of the web page, right? So the uniqueness, or what makes it unique, is the fact that it influences the appearance and the visual layout, right, of any HTML page, right? Whenever you are working, of course, if you followed me when I did the HTML series, you see that when I'm writing the HTML, right, it doesn't look good, right? Design wise, right? Nothing is styled. There is no layout to it. There is no color. All those things are not there, right? But there is no font and all that. But that is what CSS does. CSS brings that unique appearance, that visual feel and layout, right, to our page, which is what makes the web page beautiful and yeah, beautiful. So what we can do now is to actually see, apart from the fact that it influences the layout and the appearance, we want to see what other advantage do we have, right, when it comes to the use of CSS. It brings more flexibility to what we are doing, in the sense that when you are using CSS, right, it's kind of separates your content, right, from the style. it separates the content from the style, which kind of brings flexibility, which means you can really focus on what part of what style is all about, right? As regards CSS, and when it comes to HTML, you focus on what that is all about. Then when it comes to the interplay, like making your CSS style your HTML, right? Then that's when you now bring in your style and do all that. They don't work in isolation. The CSS definitely will need to interact with the HTML, but there's separation of concern. Then there's control in terms of styling too, right? You have control. You can use inline style, you can use internal style, you can use external style. Then we also have layout and appearance, which is this is the most important, right? Because with ordinary HTML, like I've said, it doesn't look good, right? It doesn't look good. And we've already explained what HTML is all about and its function, right? So basically the function of CSS is to actually give that layout and visual appearance, right, to our web page. So that's what we'll be looking at in this series. So the basic syntax for HTML, the basic syntax for CSS now, right? Let's just look at that. So when it comes to CSS is structured with rules that defines how HTML should be styled, right? So you just need to know the rule, and the rule is very basic. You must have a selector, and that selector is actually what specifies the element that you want to style, right? So whether it's a paragraph, whether it's the image, whether it's the heading, so there must be a selector. Then there is another thing, which is the declaration block, right? So as you will see here, this is the selector, right? And this is the declaration block. So inside the declaration block, you are going to have key value pair in the form of the property, right? And the value you want that property to have. For instance, you might have the color property. What value do you want? Maybe red, green, and that. You might have the property of font size. What do you want in terms of size? Maybe 20 pixel, 2 EM, and 3 REM, and all that. So these are the things we are going to be looking at. But if you understand this fundamental, right, it's going to be very, very useful. I've already explained what selector is all about, right? That is the element that you want to style. Then the property actually refers to that property that you want to apply in terms of maybe color, font size, and all that. Then we have every property, we have value. Different values can be assigned, right? In terms of color, you can have red as a value, blue as a value, green as a value, and all that. So I think that is basic enough. Then there's this visual representation that I have here in code actually. So you can see that I have a paragraph here. This is the selector, right? And this is the declaration block, in between which I can begin to define the property and the key value pairs that I want that particular selected element to have. So color here is the property, the value is blue. The property, another property here is font size, the value is 16 pixel, right? So you can have several properties and value defined within this declaration block, right? So I want to believe that is clear enough. So the next thing we want to look at is how do we then apply styles, right, to our HTML pages? How do we apply style to HTML pages? We have three different approaches, right? We have the inline way of doing it, inline style. Then we have the internal style. Then we have the external style, right? I would just like to take this one by one so that we are very clear, right, on these things and which one should be used. So there are three ways to apply CSS to a web page, the inline CSS. So the inline CSS actually is directly applied to the individual HTML elements, right, using the style attribute. So let me just be direct here that this is generally discouraged, right, because it mixes content and design. And usually when you mix content and design, it's always difficult to maintain such kind of project, right? Because you want to be able to make changes easily without looking into HTML codes and all that. But when you mix things up, it's going to be difficult to read that code. It's going to be difficult to maintain that code, right? So it's discouraged to actually use inline CSS all through. But there are times that you can use it sparingly, right? If you want to use, when you want to do dynamic rendering and all that. So this is an example of how you apply inline CSS, right? You can see this here. I have this paragraph and I have my property here listed on it as a key value pair. And take note of where this attribute, I will call this attribute now, right? Because it's on the element. So it's just that the attribute is a style, which is a CSS, which is with CSS properties defined. So I already know what attributes are, right? And where they are placed. So you can see that this is placed in the opening tag of the paragraph, not just the paragraph. The style, the attributes are always placed on the opening tag of any element that you are working with. So just to be practical about that too. So let's say I have heading 1 here, right? So this will be inline. Let's say I'm not saying this is colored with inline style. So how you apply inline style here is you come to this opening tag, right? You just say style. This is the property. This is the attribute now. You are using the style attribute, right? Then you want to define the property and the value. The property here, let's just say color, right? then the value, let's say red. So the value can be anything, right? As long as it's a recognized color value, right? Whether it's a decimal, the normal named colors and all that. So here now, you can see that this ended with a semicolon, which means you can have multiple. So if I were to have another thing, let's say I want font size, right? I might say font size of 20 pixel, right? You can see that. So anytime this is like a statement, a complete statement now, right? Separated by a semicolon. Then you start on that one, a complete statement separated by a semicolon. So these are declaration blocks now, if we were to look at it that way. So you can have several declarations here in terms of the property and the value. So when I start this now, let's just open this page so that we'll see that as we work. Okay, what I want to do here is open with okay, did I remove my okay? Let me just quickly install the third-party package that I want to use. I think probably I've uninstalled it. It's a live server. Live server. Okay, this is it. I think I've uninstalled it before. So just quickly install that. Install. So the live server has been installed now, right? So I can just come back here and say open with live server so that we can see our update. All right, just give necessary permissions that is required. All right, so you can see that this is colored now. Just as simple as that. And the basic thing take away from here is that we are using the inline style, right? So that's it with inline style. The other one is the internal style, right? So the internal style is still within the same page, but the style will need to go into the head section, right, of that particular page. So this will be inline, this will be internal style now. You have your style flag here, right? The style element here. Then in between this, you can begin to write the whatever you want to write. For instance, now, don't forget I spoke about selector. So the first thing here is H1. H1 is the selector because that is the element I want to interact with. And this is what we call tag selector. H1 here is a tag, right? I'm selecting that. Then the next, don't forget the rule. The next thing is the declaration block, which is curly braces, right? And in between here, you can now begin to write the key value pair of several properties that you know. So the next task will now be to know enough properties, right, to be able to place in between several elements that you are styling and actually present what you desire to present or what the design that has been given to you, whether on Figma or other stuff, right, to be designed. Here we need let me just change what we have here. Here we already have color, we have fonts. So let's say I want a background color property, and I just want to set that to, let's say, this color, right? So once I do that and I come back to the page, as you see, so you can see that background applied, right? So there are several things that you can do here. You can even, I can still do something like heading one on hover. So meaning that when you hover on heading one, I want to change the background. Let's say I want to change the background color to, let's say I want to change the background color to black, right? And I want to change the actual color to ash FFF, which is white, right? We still come to color codes and all that. The focus here is actually in how to style inline, internal, and external, right? So I'll just stop there. So when I come here and over on this, you can see that that is applied, right? So and that is internal style. So this is a combination of internal style, like we have it here, right? The style is placed on the element, then the inline style, I mean, then the internal style, right, which is in the edge section of the particular page, right? So all these ones have their downside, and I will talk about that. So the next one we want to look at, and the final one, is the external. So this is an example here, right? The external CSS. So usually the external CSS is written in a separate file, and you are going to name that with an extension called CSS.css. For instance, now here, right? If I want that, I might just create a new file, which is an external file. We call it main.css, right? The name is up to you, right? Inside there, I can begin to write external CSS codes, right? So let's say, for instance, now I want to move everything I've done so far here. I want to move it out of here, right? For whatever reason, I want to move it out of here. So I can just come here and say, okay, heading one, right? Because this will not apply now, right? I will need to do something like heading one. That is the element, right? Then I might need to apply these properties, right? These properties here, just like this. Then I'll need to remove this. So heading 1 now, I'm saying color is red, font size is that, right? Which is 20 pixel. Then here, I might also remove all this, right? I don't need this here again, right? I might just remove all this, move it to external, right? I will combine it because already we already have the one selector there, right? So I'll just do it this way. So now we have this external file. You see the same thing. If I come back here, see that, okay, yeah. So now this even makes sense. You can see that this is not taking the rules that we specified here. And that's because we now have an external style sheet that this particular HTML is not aware of, right? So in order for this HTML page and any other page that we have to actually make use of this CSS, right, we need to bring it in. And that is where this comes in, right? Link, the link, right? Just this way. Or if you want the full stop to waiting for your abbreviation, right? You can see. So the relationship is style sheet. Then this is where you point to where the CSS file lives. The CSS lives in the same directory that the index.html lives, right? So I'll just say /, then main.css. So now this HTML knows where the CSS lives and can easily bring in the CSS rules and apply to this page. So by the time I come back here, you can see that we have the same thing, right? So, but in terms of preference, the external CSS is better in the sense that it allows for scalability and easy maintenance of your code. It also separates the concern. If you want to maintain your CSS, you know what file, there's a separate file that is meant for that. If you want to deal with HTML, we have a separate file for that. So separation of concern, which allows the project to be easily maintainable, right? So another advantage is that this single CSS can be used to serve multiple pages, right? So let's say I have another page called about .html, and here I just have something like this, and I'll just say here, about, right? So let's say this about page now, in this about page, I can still bring in that same CSS, right? And just say point to /. So I can reuse the same CSS file, which is very, very important. But if you were to have the inline style and the internal style, it's just local to that file. You can't use it elsewhere, right? So here now, if I have heading 1 and just say about us, so the same style is going to apply, right? There's no way I can, let me just open this directly in my live server. Yeah, so you can see that the same style still apply, just like we have here, the same style apply. So one single CSS file can be used to style thousands of pages. That's why the external CSS, right, is usually favored. I think that is just what I need to explain. And I've talked about the fact that it allows for reusability and separation of content and design, right? I'm taking time to explain this because it's just important to have these fundamental explanations, right, and understanding, as against just running ahead or just cramming logics or cramming codes and all that. It's not about cramming, it's about understanding. And eventually, as you grow, you will need to demonstrate this, right? So I think that is all I want to explain here: internal style, external style, and inline style. So just to wrap this up, finally, what are the importance of CSS in web development, right? I've talked about a separation of concern. CSS separates content from design, which is very key. Consistency, so same styles across multiple web pages, ensuring uniformity, just like I've explained here. The same style here, the same main.css that can be used to style multiple pages. Then responsive design. As you continue to learn CSS, you'll see that with the use of CSS and definition of media queries, right, we can design web pages that are responsive. When you are on mobile phone, it adapts well. When you're on desktop, it adapts well, right, to whatever device you are on. Then in terms of efficiency, same styling to 100 pages, simplifying maintenance of lab project. You can have one CSS file, style several pages, right? Then user experience enhances the visual appeal and improving user learning. So we've not really designed anything here, but you can see that with CSS, we're able to apply color, we're able to apply this over effect, and so there's a lot you can do, right, in terms of visual appearance and also creating a layout. Eventually, we'll talk about flexbox, we'll talk about grid and other CSS stuff, animations, right, that makes the page look good and look like what it's all to be. So we'll wrap this up here, and in the next section, we'll move on to other concepts when it comes to working with CSS. All right. Don't also forget, if you like this, right? If you like the contents coming out from the channel, do well to subscribe. It helps the channel grow. Don't forget also to turn on the notification so that whenever I drop new content, you are the first to be notified. Also, don't forget to click on the like button, right? It helps YouTube algorithm to help the content reach out to more audience. Thank you very much.